All right, welcome to the TylerBloyer.com live streaming show here on Monday, December 2nd, 2019. Today we're going to have a very special show for you with a special guest I have on. My friend Chris McMillon of TruthConduit.com is going to be joining us. But first, let me just announce a couple things. Today I'm live streaming new on my page, End Slavery, on Facebook, just as a test. So if you want to, you can go over to my Facebook page, End Slavery, and see this streaming live. Typically, I stream to my personal page on there, but I took advantage of some Cyber Monday deals and upgraded some software here, and was able to get a good deal on the ability to now stream to multiple places. So a little bit of some testing of some new technology today, as well as possibly some new visitors and new audiences that can see the live streaming show. So that's exciting. And again, this is a live show. We're doing it live here on
Doing it
Tyler Bloyer.
live.
Do it live. And maybe later when we get more comfortable, we'll start saying the full quote from Bill O'Reilly there. We'll have like a audio clip that we can slide in. But again, there's going to be technical difficulties. I streamed yesterday. There were some audio problems sharing the videos that I shared, but it was good enough that we're going to go with it. And we learn as we go, and that's how this production has gotten to this point, even with the ability to stream out live and do live interviews. That's been a large goal behind what I've started with the content production, is to be able to get on live with somebody and have a live conversation, as well as have other visitors join the conversation if they're able. And today we're going to be talking about that a little bit. That I've shared this meeting also with some people in a group that Chris and I are part of called Autonomy. We're definitely going to talk about that. If somebody does join from Autonomy, let's just try to keep it muted for just a moment while we get through the introduction and a couple questions for Chris. And then at that point, Chris and I are fine with anybody wanting to jump in and chime in and add to the conversation. So just like anything we do in Autonomy, anyone is welcome in that group who's got a mic and a good camera, hopefully, too. But we'll get started here. Again, you can catch the show live on tylerbloyer.com/live. There's also a Discord server set up. I have my audio pumping into that server now. You can also join the show live from there and listen to the show on Discord, and even chime in if the technical gods allow it on this day. Because there always could be a problem with that. It hasn't been fully tested yet live on a show, somebody hopping in the Discord server, but that infrastructure is there. And again, you can also see this on YouTube and Facebook, streaming live. And we're going to get into it pretty quick today. We got Chris McMillon standing by patiently. Any other guests that have joined, please mute your mics. If I get to it, I will, but there's some background noise coming from Tim Flynn. Chris, why don't you hop on and say hello while I take care of that?
Hello, everybody. Tyler, I have a whole new respect for your tech abilities, because advancing as quickly as they are. When I tried to follow the video that you did with Joshua Hale on how to apply the lower third, I thought, well, this should be easy, 20-minute video. And after about 10 minutes in, I thought, this is going to take a whole new skill level. So I had to put it on the back burner. And I thought, man, what these guys are doing, the progress that they're making in the autonomy class is commendable, definitely. So I appreciate you inviting me to have a talk today. I'm an autonomy season 1 graduate. It was a year ago now. We're November, so it was just something in the back of everyone's mind. Everyone kind of knew, hold on, something's going to be starting soon, this autonomy class. I think I had just signed up maybe about this time last year. I can't remember. And a year on now, 12 months full on. It's unbelievable, the progress that's been made in just 12 months. I would have never have imagined having my own little gig and having met all the people that I've met in the past 12 months. It would have blown my mind if I'd been able to see myself a year ago. So I'm really happy about all the skills that I'm still developing and the people I'm meeting. With my website, truthconduit.com. I've recently, in fact, in the past few weeks, I've really been aggressively trying to improve on it and working out technical details. It's all about website building and video editing and all of the above. Copywriting comes into effect. Um, I'm happy with the way things are going at the moment. What do you think of my my website from a technical point of view, Tyler? Artistic point of view, anything, any feedback you can give me on it so far?
Well, I like the logo and I like the layout of the landing page, and I like how you highlight autonomy and your journey in autonomy on the page. I think just like any other project, over time, it's going to get better, and you can modify things as you go. I think the great thing that you've done here is get started. And in autonomy, massive action is not necessarily always the answer, but I think you've really kind of taken on board, getting feet on the ground and getting started, and not just kind of contemplating, but you're doing that, but plus action. And so the fact that you haven't had this site up that long, and that you have the amount of content on it that you do is pretty amazing, because if you go to look at my website, I'm very periodical in my production, so I don't have a massive amount of content, even though I've had websites up and operating for probably 6 or 7 years, kind of doing work like this. I've only kind of trickled things out. And so you've done a great job of giving yourself a landing or a starting point, a great platform to launch off of from here. And so I wouldn't really be too worried about, those questions that you asked me at this point in the game, although someone else might have the complete opposite opinion and say you should really focus on, your call to action, and focus on providing a lead magnet, and getting people's email. About the only thing I ask for on my website is an email from people. I think that that's a really good long-term way to stay in touch with people. I have emails that I've kept for over a decade now, right? I think everybody has a Gmail at this point, even though we all, love the gulag so much that we just want to stay in it. The fact that you have an alternative platform out there for people to go look at alternative information is a great start, I think, like you said. So
The most important thing for me is to provide a way for the people that I talk to. They need to be heard. And that's really all that matters, is to get what they have to say out there. Now, and then the rest of the details will just follow. For me, the most important two things are to get the interview done. So anyone who comes to the site will say, who's this person, and have lots of relevant links. So I go through it. My approach is, because I remember when I was going through the painful process of realizing that things are not what they seem, the waking up process, when I realized things, yeah, that I've been duped, I've been processed like a can of sardines, and it's going to take me the rest of my life to unlearn everything that's been programmed into me, and bit by bit I'm doing it. But when I was going through that process in the early days, and I really started to aggressively and just take everything in, all this new information, it was like being reborn. It was like waking up again. So the idea of my website is, I go through it from the eyes of someone who's genuinely curious about these topics. So they go in, they listen to what the person has to say, or not, go straight to the links, look at all the links, and follow those links, and do their own research. And hopefully it'll lead to somebody making a better decision in their lives. Because I think each and every person that I have spoken to has got a very, very important message. And the work that everybody I speak to, very, very important to say. Sometimes, I mean, we're talking life or death. It may seem a bit extreme, but there are people out there being duped every day, being processed, and they don't understand. They can't pinpoint the problem. Well, here in the quote unquote alternative media, we are pinpointing the problem by using logic and critical thinking, and breaking down, identifying the fallacies, eliminating the contradictions and working together to see what's left. And it's true in the alternative media as well. I mean, there's a lot of BS out there. So at the end of the day, critical thinking is the most important thing. So yeah, I mean, everybody I've spoken to, I think, has got an important message. And also, one thing I must say I'm happy with is the variety of topics that are covered. There's no, I don't specify in any particular aspect other than the people I speak to understand that, well, they love freedom. That's basically, and they understand that there's a real war against freedom in ways that people cannot imagine going on. That's the common thread that everybody I speak to has got. So if they get onto my radar and I realize, hold on, this person, they know what's going on, they've taken the metaphorical red pill, I want to talk to them. So the important thing is all the tech issues and the beauty, the design of the website and all that. It's very important, but it's just a side gig. The important thing is get the message out there.
Right.
So
Yeah, and I met you recently at Red Pill, and I really liked your energy that you bring to the table, and working with you was a pleasure, and we'll talk about that in a little bit here. But I also, wanted to get a little bit of a background on Truth Conduit, Chris McMillon. I've gotten a little bit here and there on your travels, or not, I mean, just travels, but living in different parts of the world. So you're living in Texas now, but that's not where you've been always. And can you give us kind of a history? Doesn't have to go all the way back, but as far back as you'd like to go to give us some context.
it's sometimes it's hard for me to talk about it because I miss Spain so much. I I truly love that culture and that country with all my soul. I left tech. I was processed. I went to high school. I was a good kid. I made good grades, which basically I realize now just means I was good at following orders. Same in college. Went to college and got my useless degree that I have never used in my life. Um, 1997, I graduated from Texas A&M Commerce, and that was it. I got on a plane. I just knew I wanted to get out. I always knew I wanted to go abroad. So I went to Spain when I was 23. I had a backpack, and I'm not talking about these big backpacks that backpackers wear around Europe. I'm talking the kind of backpack that you would wear to class. And that is all I had. I didn't have a suitcase, nothing. I had about $500, which I thought was a lot of money. Um, and I landed in Madrid, and that was it. I said, I'm going to do whatever it takes to stay here. And I had a return ticket 3 months later. And I thought $500. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what I was doing. But all I knew is I had to get out. It was time for me to actually start living my life. And I spent 23 years doing what I was supposed to be doing, and it was good times. Don't get me wrong. Um, Great friends, good times. I mean, it's not a bad life here in Texas. Um, but yeah, I went to Spain and ended up. I was illegal. I was an illegal immigrant for 3 years. I always consider. I always compare myself to the Invisible Man. There's a novel out there by a man named Ralph Waldo Emerson. Not
Mm-hmm.
Don't be confused with the poet Ralph Waldo Ellison.
Mm.
Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote a book called The Invisible Man, and it was about a man in Harlem. And it's a heavy, hard-hitting novel. And during the 1930s, I believe. But anyway, he's a guy in the big city, and he's invisible for many reasons. And I always felt like a bit like him. I was the Invisible Man for 3 years, and I didn't realize it at the time. But those first 3 years before I did finally get the paperwork. I got legal. Um, I got my identification, and at the time I was quite proud of it. Oh, I got my ID, Spanish ID, and but hindsight now, I've come to realize years later, after I took the metaphorical red pill and started to realize, I look back at those years in hindsight, and I do have Hindsight's 2020. Those were the freest years, not only that I lived, but anybody could possibly live in that situation. I didn't exist. I didn't have a bank account. I didn't have a credit card. Everything was cash. Um, I didn't sign any contract where I was living. Um, I'm kind of starting to write a book. I'm writing a book about it, trying to put it all in perspective, and also reflecting on the way I was, the way I went about things. I was so naive and ignorant, and there were a lot of things that happened during those 3 years. And one of them was I literally went 3 years without watching any kind of TV or any kind of screen at all. Nothing. And that was kind of a cleansing for me, although I didn't realize it at the time. There was no internet. I had no cell phone. Um, I mean, I could go on that those first 3 years were stories always go back to those first 3 years. And then once I did get my paperwork, and you know, doors did open up opportunities for work, and every year got better. I got more jobs, more contacts. I was teaching English mainly, and with experience. And I didn't need a degree. Nobody ever asked me for my degree when I first got there. Okay, this was a stroke of luck. They were just interested. You're a native speaker, cool. I got to. They were, when you went to look for a job in Madrid back then, the first question what they would ask is, when are you available? They weren't interested in your qualifications. That came second. Can you fill in this class, that class? But time went on, I gained experience, and in the end, I ended up staying in Spain for 18 years. And I came back just to Texas 4 years ago now, just over 4 years ago, and with
Wow.
my wife and 2 kids. And
Wow.
that's kind of the story in a nutshell. I always considered myself to be very left wing. I always took pride in the fact that I thought socialism was cool, and how could you possibly be anything else? And yeah, the path. In fact, I can kind of relate to Carrie Wedler. I don't know if you know her. She's a big name in the alternative media. She does these short video clips, and she quite often talks about how she was an Obama supporter. And I remember when Obama got voted the first time, we threw an Obama party. And when I say I'm not left wing, I don't want people to think that I'm right wing either. There's something else. There's something so much better that is where literally we are kept from. That is intentionally kept out of the public education system. That we're not taught about these things, these ideas of true freedom. Um, so even since I moved back to Texas and have really started aggressively taking on the lessons that are learned by John Taylor Gatto and the lessons learned by the things that can be learned from G. Edward Griffin about the Federal Reserve System, and from John Taylor Gatto, the true history of education and its true intent, and everything that Richard and Lisa put together in the Peace Revolution podcast. Combine that with the work of James Corbett. He hits it hard. He tells it like it is. And he's a major influence on anyone in the alternative media. Open source. Don't believe me. Do your own research. I mean, how can you argue with that? Don't believe me. Here are the links. Here are the sources. Look it up for yourself. I mean, that's where you can't get. And yeah, maybe people do look it up for themselves and will present an argument. I don't know. I've been meaning to ask him, has he ever been proven wrong? I've thought about, I don't know, but I'm sure he would welcome it, and like anyone, and take it as a chance to learn. And that is the attitude going forward that we take on in autonomy and with our alternative websites. And it's just a growing process. I think my point, going back a bit further, is, I was a bit smug. I thought, if you're not left wing, then then you support George Bush, or even worse, you support living in Spain. If you weren't left wing, then you were a Franco. You supported the dictator Franco. And for me, that's what I actually thought it meant. Because I didn't know history, I didn't know anything. I didn't realize what it meant, that both the right and the left wing, at the end of the day, they're not about freedom at all. And there's so many heavier lessons that are going on that I've learned since moving back to Texas and really taking on the ideas really that are proposed in autonomy and tragedy and hope and these websites.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. I can't believe, you know, the perspective that I can imagine that I would gain by living outside of the United States. I think I was lucky enough to transplant outside of the state where I grew up and live somewhere else in the U.S. For another period of time, and then come back to where I grew up. So similar to you, but not as long of a time. And I didn't travel to a different country, so I don't know, what that would be like. I know that just moving outside of the city I grew up in and the place that I grew up in, and it was like leaving the bubble. And so yeah, I mean, maybe that's why you're the man, because you had this awesome journey and this perspective that was gained through all that. I mean, and you obviously met your wife along that journey. So
One
when
of the
things,
strangest sensations anyone could ever feel, and this is what it feels like, or I'm getting reaccustomed now, is moving back to the place you're from, and it feels like a completely foreign country. It really is a strange sensation. You recognize everything, you know how things work, you know the system, but you see it, you see things you've never noticed before. It is a strange sensation. But having lived abroad for so long, now I appreciate the things about where I'm from more than I ever would have come to appreciate had I not moved abroad for so long. Things that people here take for granted every day. The biggest example I hear is people. I'm from a small town of 2,000 people. It's called Caddo Mills, Texas, and I bump into old school friends I see here and there, and they've never really left Caddo, and they feel ashamed of that. There's this shame. Oh, I wish I'd done what you did. What I did is not for everybody, for first of all, but there's this stigma about the town. But I don't know. There are amazing things about every culture, and the people, and and the people who don't move around so much. There's nothing wrong with that, um, but they, I think they're a bit too hard on where they're. Sometimes I think they're a bit too hard where they're from, and at the same time, on the other extreme, there's a bit too much pride going on around around where one is from as well. So it goes. It's either sometimes I see it on both extremes, especially in Spain. My goodness, everyone from whatever zone they are, whatever region, from whatever pueblo. That pueblo is the greatest place in the world, guaranteed. But I mean, yeah,
that
lessons
sounds
learned.
amazing.
But I really, living now, I appreciate the things, the good things. I know what to appreciate. It's all about recognizing, identifying the advantages and disadvantages of when you go from place to place. And the more you travel, the more you come to recognize that. And recognition, you know it,
Yeah.
and just go from there.
There's someone else on this call that I know lives maybe in another country and willing to discuss that. And you guys at this point, feel free. I see a couple other people joined us to jump in if you have a question for Chris. But Michael, I know you yourself live in another country, and me and my family are coming up at the end of the year, going to travel to Mexico for a couple week kind of dry run, test run, in order to kind of make a checklist and test things out for longer period travel. So, what are your thoughts on what Chris was just talking about?
And number one, thank you for letting me join in on this conversation. I'm already blown away just hearing Chris's story. You know, much respect to you, Chris, for taking that risk and doing what you did. And Spain is something I had the opportunity to visit when I was in the military, and I spent a few weeks there and absolutely loved the place. It's so much different than the rest of Europe that I just
Spain is definitely different.
yeah, yeah. So in that respect, I have a great deal of respect, and I can certainly understand why you have such a hard time leaving it. And but
Yeah,
when
we
you
came
get
back.
go ahead.
we made the decision to come back because it was my parents are getting on up there, and it was a combination of reasons. At the end of the day, we wanted to, we just wanted to see what would happen. We wanted to see what we could do in the States. We loved Spain. We left with a lot of reluctance, but there were a lot of signs in Spain going on that we said, well, it's time for us to leave. And actually, that was the second time we left Spain when we moved to Texas. We had left before for about 3 years. We were at a critical point in our lives. What are we doing with our lives? So we went to the UK for 3 years, and it was good times there. But that was when we realized what a good deal we had in Spain. So we moved back. But yeah, we moved back to Texas, and it's great being back on the land where I grew up and looking after my parents. And my parents have their grandparents here. So we're all here, and that's really what we had to do. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure being in Spain, that's one of the things that I love about Mexico too, is the interconnection of the family is certainly something that's much more of importance than I think in a lot of the modern world. Is the family has taken a real decline in regard to the priorities of people. And
That's a very good point, because that was something, again, in everything that I've just mentioned before, the whole waking up process. I'd never really thought about the war against families, and yet there is one. Rest assured, there is a war against families. It's been going on for a long time. I didn't see it until, again, one of the many facets of taking the metaphorical red pill is you start to see it, and that's why I think it's more important than ever to keep the families together. I love Tristan Haggard and Rebecca's slogan on their website at primaledgehealth.com. Eat meat, make families. I thought that's the biggest middle finger to the powers that shouldn't be, right there.
Yeah,
and I thought that's
tell us
brilliant.
a little bit about that, Chris, with your interview with Tristan. For those of my audience or people watching this that aren't familiar with Primal Edge Health and what he talks about over there, can you discuss that a little bit for us?
Well, Tristan's story is very interesting because he was a vegan. He went full circle. He went from being a vegan to full-blown carnivore. So he found that was the best path for him. It was the healthiest, and there's a lot of science behind it, a lot of history. He dropped a lot of links in my interview with him, a lot of historical references. I didn't have time. I wanted, and we might meet again, hopefully in the near future, tie it into what's happening today. There's a lot of strange things happening today around eating meat, as anyone who turns on the news can see. But the ketogenic diet, if anyone who doesn't know, it cuts out all carbs. It's mainly animal fat and a bit of vegetables, basically. And then the full-blown carnivorous diet is nothing but animal fat-based diet. I've been on the ketogenic diet for some time now, although I admit the last few weeks we were traveling, and I went off keto. There was a few times it was hard, but I have felt better than ever. And we were, going 10 years back, we've always been organic, non-GMO. And we thought that's it. Just, eat organic, don't eat GMOs. And, that's it. Eat what pretty much, and then common sense, avoid junk food, junk sugar, fast food, et cetera, et cetera. Give up the sodas, of course. But I don't know. The ketogenic diet, I think there's something to that. And their website, they have a cookbook. I really would like to get it pretty soon. I don't think I'm hardcore enough yet to really go into fancy recipes or anything, but what they do is very interesting. And I also find them interesting because they live abroad like I did, and they're doing it. They're living the dream. They've got their website, everything that we study in autonomy of how to build a successful website. They're doing it. And so I think their work is definitely worth checking out for anyone who wants to improve their health, because I don't know, to each their own. Everybody has different diets. and my wife and I, we've experimented with different diets. Health is so important. What works for some people doesn't work for others. But the carnivore diet was never even on my radar until until I met Jordan in Autonomy, and then apparently everyone knew about it except me. I'm like, what? What is this?
Yeah, it's kind of amazing
And a
how
lot of
fast
people
it's
have,
caught on.
yeah, a lot of people have gotten rid of a lot of their health issues by trying this diet. Again, I don't know. There's something to it. There's so much information out there
Yeah,
to learn.
I like Tristan's interviews with Michaela Peterson. I'm not huge on Jordan Peterson, but he would look at the Jungian archetypes of your food diet. No, just kidding. But Jordan Peterson's daughter, Michaela Peterson, that was pretty bad. I'll have to maybe try to recover from that later, or just call that a bad one.
Hey, if we're getting silly, I can pull out my lightsaber. I got it right here.
Well, I was going to say, I'm glad you kept your shirt on for the interview. We discussed that beforehand. And no, but his interviews with Michaela are worth watching. She had all kinds of health issues and autoimmune disorders and different things that she had going on. And just eating steaks is what she eventually went on an elimination diet to greens and ribeyes. And now, I don't know if she's still doing that exactly, but she ate just ribeyes for the longest time. And I did buy the carnivore cookbook for my wife. She's digging it. She's made some things out of that cookbook. And I think Tristan would be a good guest to have on this show. So thanks for bringing him back up into my mind. When you first mentioned him, I'm like, I heard that name before, and I did know. We've purchased things from their website. We bought some chocolate from them. And my wife left it in a cabin that we stayed at in the mountains, so she tried like one bite of the chocolate and then left it there. But there was something else I was going to mention with the Tristan Haggard and his work, but I can't recall exactly. But no problem.
Well,
so
he does. He does the Boiler Room. He joins that show on Thursdays, and Tim Flynn brought me onto that show, and I appreciate that, Tim. Yeah, I really like. They do modern events. They cover current events about things going on, and he joins them along with Jay Dyer and Aaron and Melissa Dykes get on there as well.
Yeah, I totally dig the Boiler Room. Not that I agree with everybody's opinion on the show, but it's just an interesting format. This show could sort of turn into that format one day. I've been envisioned that on maybe a night like tonight, Monday nights, we come on and do a roundtable with people. But I remembered what I was going to say was that my wife, she ended up bedridden with inflammation, pain in the arms and the legs and the gut, and then just really sore to the point where she was bedridden. She was breastfeeding our two babies at that time. And so we had to fix this problem. We couldn't, have mom be down and out. So we started her son's grandmother. That's probably the wrong way to phrase that relationship, but she mentioned the GAPS diet and said you need to look into the GAPS diet. So we looked into it, and basically to start off the GAPS protocol, I think there's a long period of fasting, but that's followed by just bone broth. And so she started making the bone broth immediately. And I think, because she couldn't afford to go on some long fast while she's sitting there trying to breastfeed these two children. And so the GAPS diet actually goes in, and I won't be able to explain it exactly what it does, but there's gaps in the gut wall that get caused by certain foods that you're eating. We found out oxalates was one of those foods that was causing a problem. And the GAPS diet, the bone broth, apparently the collagen and the fats and the other things help heal the gut. And now she can eat things that she couldn't eat before when she went through the GAPS diet, and dairy is no problem anymore. So that actually healed a lot of problems. And then through that, she was doing these spinach smoothies, and then she had another issue. And we found out that spinach, almonds, almond milk, all these things that she was really eating a lot of have this thing in it called oxalates. And oxalates are an anti-nutrient that actually your body has a very hard time with, and it causes your stomach to kind of shut down so you don't absorb other nutrients either. And so she was only eating this stuff at one point. And so we tied a lot of her issues to spinach and oxalates, and these things are found in plants. And not to say
where else do oxalates come from? Is it just spinach, or what else?
It's in a lot of things. So she potatoes, I believe, has oxalates. There's almonds are very heavy in oxalates. Kale has phytotoxins and oxalates. So there's these things called anti-nutrients in the plants. And not only that, but, plants are just very fibrous. And your stomach, when it's absorbing, the nutrients or the proteins or, like I said, I'm not going to be able to use the proper terminology here, but you can just imagine how that some plants' material may be a lot harder to derive the nutrients from, right? I think we could imagine that. Where these oxalates actually cause a problem. The anti-nutrients actually can cause inflammation or leaky gut and cause other big problems once you have leaky gut. So yeah, I mean, for us, animal fats and animal products and dairy, we're not just like feeling better. It was make or break at one point, and the only solution that seemed to work was the GAPS diet. So, I mean, that's a little bit of testimonial. It's not science. It's not hard facts, but that's what I witnessed.
Is there anything that she doesn't eat now? You know what I mean? Is she back to normal? We went out to eat there in Red Pool. I can't remember. What did she have? I can't remember.
She's basically carnivore diet and with no nightshades and we stay away from oxalates.
Man,
so that does
no
eliminate a lot of stuff. Yeah, but no nightshades. That turns out to be another anti-GAPS diet.
Oh, that's hard, man. No tomatoes, no potatoes.
There's a video I'll put in the show notes about this that we both found to be very helpful.
You know what I miss being on keto is rice, because I love rice. But I tell you what, I can, since I started the keto, there's been a few times I've gone back and, I've had a big bowl of rice last week and bam, food coma. It just knocked me out. I just went to sleep basically. That hadn't happened in a long time. And I realized I didn't realize, not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm weary of the keto diet and I'm weary of going full carnivore. So I'm not strict necessarily, but I will say that when I'm mainly eating carnivore, I feel great. I'm not, I haven't done that over 5-10 years. I haven't done the long haul and been able to say that. So I know a lot of people, they change their diet and then they're like, I feel wonderful. And your body always does when you change things drastically. I mean, not always. Sometimes you might feel like horrible, right? Some diets, like juicing diets, it's going to make you feel maybe very energetic and all these things. But I tried vegetarian diet for a while, for a few years actually. And that didn't work out for me personally. Yeah. It took my health in the opposite direction. And so, that's personal experience. Again, I didn't go in and take blood samples throughout the whole time. I'm not that detailed with that stuff. I'm just kind of more pay attention to how I feel and how I'm reacting to things.
Everybody's different. Everybody's different. The whole talk of diet and health is just one aspect of autonomy that kind of goes on behind the scenes. You've got the official things that we do talk about when it comes to life skills, business skills, communication skills, interviewing, public speaking, what help me out here, editing, marketing, all that.
I'm not going to help you out because you're season 1.
Yeah.
And I'm still
and then
just
behind
a young
the scenes,
Padawan.
Unofficially, everybody also takes on these heavy topics. Anything that improves one's life, we're talking
What's
about.
Up, Pam? How you doing?
Hey, how y'all doing?
Hola, Pam. ¿Cómo estás, amiga?
Bien, bien. Y tú, mi amigo de siempre.
So I met Pam last May, we had a Texas gathering of autonomy, and that was great. That was it was kind of a prelude to the Red Pill Expo in Hartford, Connecticut. So during the final presentation of season 1, there was a big group of us hanging out at Pam's house. And that was good fun. Yeah. When's the next party, Pam?
I would definitely like to party, but it's not even funny. So life has gotten in the way, and I've missed you, and I've missed my autonomizer friends. But I've got to say, I wanted to jump on this and say congratulations to you two guys doing this today. I like the fact that Tyler's more into his, more content. And
Yeah.
I have got to say, I really appreciate you for getting out there so early and so often in season one and just trying it. It's like, hey, I don't care if there's no safety net. I'm going. I'm trying it. So
I didn't have a
I'm real.
choice. I didn't have a choice. I got thrown into it. I literally got thrown into it. Um, I spoke to Richard. I booked him, and we did the interview. And then I thought, I'll see if James Corbett wants an interview. And Corbett wrote back, and I sent him an email, and I didn't think I would hear back from him ever at all. I didn't expect to hear back from him. And literally, I'm not kidding, 10 minutes after I sent the email, my wife goes, he's just written back. So it was, up your game and do or die. And that was it. And after I got Corbett on video, I mean, yeah.
I just
So
thought that was so neat, and it was really cool to see how you were developing as an interviewer. And I just am thankful, truly, for everybody kind of really upping my game. And just when you're around a culture of excellence, it brings out the excellence that you have inside that maybe has been dampened by life in general and also in specific our toxic culture that we have shoved down our throats, and choosing not to partake in that and choosing to partake in things that are really important such as
yeah,
family, community, autonomy, which is to me a community even though it's online. It's really, really wonderful. And to see how many people are just growing and blossoming and expanding their areas of influence. And that's really how anything ever gets done in life, is for people to be within their authentic selves and to be able to share and to be truthful and to help others along the way. So I say more power to y'all. Woohoo!
cool. Thanks a lot, Pam. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Thank you for chiming in and joining us and not being scared to just jump in. This is going out live on YouTube and Facebook on my personal platforms. So just FYI, everybody that's jumping in, just to make it obvious. I wasn't sure if that was clear. But, bringing up autonomy, I wanted to share a video here. It's a short one. And the people on the Zoom call, all you're going to do is hear this. Hopefully that works anyway. You won't see it, and it's not that I can't just share my screen. It's just the way that this all flows. It's much easier the way that it is. You can also monitor things on YouTube or something like that. But, you'll hear this audio, hopefully. I'm just going to jump into a clip from Chris here talking about autonomy.
The most important thing is the library of knowledge that's being collected here. My kids are really picking it up as well. For example, the introduction of Robert Kiyosaki, I'd never heard of him before autonomy, and now my son plays his game regularly. He's got cash flow, he's got the physical board game, and he's got it online, and he's going to know more about investing assets and liabilities than I will. For example, not to mention all the literature, everything I'm learning in the back of my mind is ultimately for them. I'm hoping that they will eventually take interest and pick up. I tell them everything that's going on in autonomy is probably some of the most important lessons that hopefully you'll be wanting to learn in the future. And I think in the long run, it's definitely going to benefit all of them. Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind. The time did cut into what I would be doing otherwise. Yeah, but so what? It's a small period, it's a small moment. And, like anything, you make room for it. Time management skills, you know what I mean? I think Marie, my wife, some of you known her, you've talked to her a few times. She's been so supportive and just nothing but supportive. In fact, I would not have gone to Red Pill when you first announced Red Pill, Hartford, Connecticut, it wasn't even on my radar to think that of actually going. You know what I mean? I just thought, oh, that'd be cool to go, but there wasn't even a but. There wasn't even but it's a shame I can't go. It wasn't even that far on my radar. But she said, well, why don't you go? And I thought, well, I guess I could. And it just seemed a bit extreme at the time, because you started announcing it early days, and the flow of autonomy really was just getting started. And then, of course, it didn't take long to realize how important this would be to make the effort to get up.
Okay. So that goes on a little bit, and I have a couple more clips like that, but I figured, hey, we got the real Chris McMillon right here. We're doing it live. So, Chris, what is that? What's autonomy for people that might be watching this that are like, what the hell are these guys talking about? Is it some online cult? What's going on here? We've mentioned it a few times on the show. So yeah, what is it all about?
In a nutshell, autonomy is everything that people need to learn to become more independent. Life skills that are not taught in high school or in university, at least not stressed at how important they can be. I'm talking about the ability for anyone to hone in on to reach their true potential, whatever they're interested in, to survive and make money for themselves, skills to become more independent. This does the name, autonomy. So basically it's a business class. I wouldn't say business, life skills course. But these are the life skills that are probably the most important life skills anyone would need. And you didn't get them, and you did not get them. You did. If you went to college and high school, they were not stressed enough how important they are. So that basically sums it up.
Nice. Yeah. And I'll allow Michael if you want to chime in on that too, because he's newer, as am I, to autonomy, and I've gone and talked about it a little bit already on this channel. So what's your perspective? I know that you've had some kind of like fast moving current since you've stepped in. So what's been going on with you?
Hey Tyler, I appreciate the way you're running this, man, because I really like the way that you're inviting people in to have this discussion, and certainly the way you've set it up here. I haven't really had a whole lot of time to review some of your information, but I'm really loving what you're doing. So I want to point that out. But in regard to autonomy, I would say one of the things that you guys mentioned, culture of excellence, that I think is one of the most important things that in the outside world, we've got a culture of decay and depravity, and that wears on everybody, and it's unfortunate that it has bled into almost everything. But having a culture that's the opposite of that, and an opportunity to be involved in a culture like that, I think is certainly something that people should take as an opportunity, because it is so much of like what our mindset gets really run down on is the negativity and stuff that we have to deal with on a daily basis, and we just assume that that's life is hard, and you just got to deal with all the kind of baloney. But the reality is you don't really have to deal with any of that baloney when you have people that you trust, and people that are constantly trying to learn and trying to help you. I mean, it's just really amazing to me how much help I've got in this few weeks that I've been involved here. It's been such a tremendous difference. And it's certainly something that I have always tried to strive for in all the things that I've done, is just to try and create that kind of environment where we're trying to help each other out. Certainly in my experience in construction and even in the military, I always wanted to build that esprit de corps of, the morale of the unit to try and help each other. But, I always considered that, in opposition to the regular world, that we would just have to help each other, but we couldn't expect that for the rest of the world. but that is something that I'm really changing my point of view on. That, yeah, man, this could be something completely different. And, there's a book that I really love that I got a recommendation from Larkin Rose. It's one of his top three books. Is The Discovery of Freedom. And in reading that, actually, Ed Bugos is actually the guy that suggested to read it. But
Looks like
reading
Chris has a copy.
reading that book, I think, really opened my eyes widely to this idea that there's this culture that happens, and when it happens, it's like an explosion. It's like magic, and it's only happened in a few occasions in the entire history of the world as we know it. And so, freedom is not something that you can take easily. It's something that is a responsibility that we've got to care for, because, if we lose it, it could be another couple thousand years before someone figures it out again. And it has made a big impact in the world and changed the world in such a way, but they're trying to shut that door and get rid of it. And so
Yeah, weren't
autonomy
they?
is also. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, weren't they trying to book burn Little House on the Prairie at one point? Did you guys hear something about that?
I
Who's
wouldn't. I
they?
wouldn't be surprised.
No, there's a story out there, because, as you know, this Discovery of Freedom was written by Rose Wilder Lane, who is the daughter of Laura Ingalls Wilder, who's the author of the Little House on the Prairie series. My daughter just read Little House in the Big Woods, and now we've just ordered it. She wants the next book, Little House on the Prairie. So Rose Wilder Lane obviously got her ideas of freedom and liberty from Laura Ingalls Wilder, so it makes sense that they're trying to book burn it. I'd have to look into that, but I'm sure last year there was an attempt, or maybe they did it, to take the books out of the schools' libraries. Might be worth looking into in the future. I don't know.
Yeah, it's an interesting book. It's written during World War II, and her perspective is quite a bit different than the perspective today. I think most Americans' perspective, and I think in a large part, what she feared wouldn't happen has happened. I think to a large degree. And so I think some of that book, she points out some of the things that could go wrong, and they have. And that was another wake up for me, I think.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but a major book for me that was The Straw on the Camel's Back was written by Larkin Rose, The Most Dangerous Superstition. Now, his influence was, I believe, this book. I'm not sure how factual that is, but that's not his name. I mean, and that's where he gets the name Rose in his name. But that book, I somehow got a hold of it just after about the time I moved back from Texas. And that was my biggest aha moment. I knew things were wrong. I was all over the place, though, when it came to the alternative media. I was only in the alternative media. I knew not to trust the mainstream media, but there was contradictions here and there, and I didn't, things didn't make, and there was something I was missing. And then I read that book, and that's it. I said that that's it. That is what, and that was everything just came together for me after reading The Most Dangerous Superstition. It all made sense, and it's helped a lot of things make sense from there on out. And now, honestly, I'll never see the world the same again once you take on that book.
It's a good book. I like The Most Dangerous Superstition for what it provides. I think it helps really kind of solidify the viewpoint that Larkin is putting forward. I do, to fault Larkin a little bit and be a little bit critical, which I tend to do with everyone, is that I wish his whole presentation would kind of evolve over the years. Now people would say, what do you mean he's doing the mirror and the candles in the dark? But what I mean is the sophistication of the philosophy and putting it forth has not changed much. It's kind of stayed in the same realm of what was popular with the book. And so that makes me a little skeptical, you know, because I feel like the over a 10-year period that things should evolve a little bit, and it hasn't much. And now again, this is my opinion. I'm not saying like what I'm saying is a concrete thing, but just to throw it out there, I have the book. It's probably on that shelf right there. I've read it. I like Larkin Rose to an extent, but I feel like he is sort of just kind of living off that one hit. Not that that's a bad thing, but I personally find holes in the argument, and that's what I mean, is I could pick holes in a lot of his points, and I feel like he's aware of that and should have evolved beyond that and hasn't. But you know, not to distract from what was being said there, and the weight of it for your personal journey, and the other book that you mentioned, I'm going to have to look into that. I have not read that book, and I'm familiar with Ed Bugos, and even his writing is I like what he writes in his financial writings and stuff. So if he recommends it and you two guys recommend it, that's good enough for me. I took a note, but it's always funny because this is recorded, so I have. But I still like
unless
to take
you want
notes.
to watch the whole replay. Where was that? And
Yeah.
You better write it down now.
That's right. So on the screen here, I'm going to share my screen, which again, the people on Zoom are not going to see. But what it is your website, Chris. We talked about it earlier, and right now it's being shared on the screen. So while I kind of scroll through here and give people a preview of what you got going on, I wanted to see if you could give us some ideas for what you have going on in the future. We recently, you and I went to Red Pill, and I know that you may or may not be able to make it to the next Red Pill, but what else do you have slated in the future, or some of the stuff that you've done recently that people should be aware of?
Well, at the moment, I'm pretty much back in the lessons being taught at Autonomy, although I haven't been that active in catching the lectures or the Q&A live. But I'm working on skills in affiliate marketing, copywriting, video editing never ends. I've only just 2 days ago finally got a Patreon page. I figured out how to attach it to truthconduit.com. I thought it was just a simple question of copy and paste. It's not. You've got to do the short code. Took me a while to figure that out. And then on Patreon, I had to decide how I wanted to go about doing it. I mean, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing, just, making mistakes, moving forward, constantly improving. I want to eventually get everything over to BitChute. I don't like YouTube. I don't trust YouTube. I'm kind of all over the place as far as the original source. I've been putting my videos up on the Autonomy channel, and I do have a Truth Conduit YouTube channel, but I've only got one video up there. Everything else is on the Autonomy channel. One foot in, one foot out. So these are all areas that I'm working to improve on, and just trying to keep reaching out to people, and hopefully people talk to me. There's 2 or 3 people that said, yeah, let's do it. We just need to arrange some things going on. It's my fault. I missed Kevin Cole last week. We were going to have a little chat, but I was in a bad way at the time, and I had to postpone that. But hopefully I'll get Kevin on. We'll have a nice talk about what he does. Again, he's an example of what I go for. If anyone wants to learn the real hardcore history that you were not taught in college, Kevin Cole's your man. He's a hardcore forensic historian. He's one example of people that I want to talk to. And I don't know. I don't know. I'm debating on getting a few season 2, the way I did the season 1 interviews, just like the integration exercise, but record it with season 2 people. I would like to get that going, but I don't want to, because again, it's time consuming. But I do like to create a profile, because I think what I've done with season 1 students is I've created a good slice of what's going on in Autonomy. People say someone's interested. What's this Autonomy class is about? They can go to my website and they can look at the Autonomy Vault, and bam, there's about 20 interviews of season 1 people that I have interviewed there. It's all there. And
I'll share that on the screen while you talk about it.
yeah. And the only season 2 person I've talked to is, I guess, Susan and yourself. So I feel like I need to, and several season 2 people have reached out to me. I want to make more of an effort to do integration exercises with the season 2 people, because it's an amazing group of people going on. Yourself, Michael, are 2 shining examples of, it's such an interesting crowd. So that's what's going on. Make more of an effort with the season 2 people. And you mentioned Red Pill. Yeah, from what I understand, it's confirmed. Red Pill Expo 2020 is going to happen in. Do you remember J. Edward Griffin when we were talking to him there? He said it may be on Jekyll Island. Well, little bird talking out there. Word is it's confirmed. So June 2020, Red Pill Expo, Jekyll Island, Georgia. How cool will that be? It will definitely be going. Definitely plan on going. So that is something to look forward to. And that's it. Improving my skills, pushing forward. And the biggest challenge all of us face, every one of us, is juggling these skills that we're improving on in autonomy. I've got my website going because I'm trying to create content that people can use as a study guide, especially people who are going through the waking up process. That's what I'm trying to do. And then we've got real life, we've got jobs, we've got to work for fiat money. These skills we're working on eventually do pay off, and they will pay off. They are paying off for a lot of people in autonomy already. But you've got to do them. You've got to work for free for a long time before you can start cashing in. So, just keep working on these skills, but at the same time management, man. We got to get out there and go to work. And some of us are stuck in a cubicle. Some of us are, it's hard. Yeah. It's but I think most autonomizers are optimistic despite all this.
Yep, exactly. I hear you, man. The struggle is real. And Tim Flynn, earlier you came on. You were unmuted. I muted you because there was sounded like some background noise. But feel free to jump in. I see that you're there listening, as well as anybody else at this point in the interview. Chris and I are, just kind of tumble into a conversation here, and at any point things could get wrapped up or continue on depending on what people want to talk about. I really appreciate Chris coming on. Go ahead.
No, sorry. Is that JH? Is that Jim Hood? That's someone else who I'm going to speak
Jim
to.
Hood,
hopefully this week
device?
Or the next. Yeah.
It's either Jim Hood
Jim
or
Hood
Joshua
has
Hell
got his
mobile
course.
Device.
Yeah. He's got his course, Test Drive Your Future. He's doing an amazing thing. He's an example of someone who's taken the skills and autonomy and are just going with it. So I definitely want to talk to Jim Hood and get everything that his course is about out there to the world, because he's providing. Oh, that's Joshua Hale. In any case, I'm still relevant to Jim Hood. Things that what Jim Hood is offering is an alternative for high school kids to actual high school. And here's another amazing guy, our shining leader, Joshua Hale, in the house. So yeah, JH. So yeah, everybody they're all taking the skills they've learned in autonomy and are just running with it. And
it looks like Joshua's out walking around on his property there. I figured it was Joshua. If you're out walking around, he's probably just getting the live preview of the show before this. Well, it's hitting the airwaves right now too, so there's really no benefit to joining this Zoom call other than to see a screw up or, hey, yeah, there you are, Josh. Why don't you say hi?
I wanted the non-delayed version, so I jumped in here.
You don't want to wait 20 seconds.
I'm up on the ladder doing my holiday lights. I don't think anyone's ever done this on a podcast before.
I think you're right. Yeah, that's great. That's not like we got ice up there.
That's
nice. Well, that's
just
what
be
this is
careful,
for.
man. It's still light where you are. I forget what it's 6:10 here in Texas. It's dark. It's completely black outside. You got what?
Yep, it's fading quickly, so I'm trying to finish my the last string of lights before nightfall, and then
Joshua Hale, it's because of your ideas, that the all of the tech ideas with Discord, everything that put autonomy together and makes it what it is today is because of you, because of Joshua Hale there in the house, live in person, and the things that you have done moving forward with your life. I mean, you started off working with social media, and now things are just escalating for you at full momentum. You're from the skills you've learned from autonomy. You're doing it. You're doing it.
Yeah, we are doing it. It's funny. The last project that I created it with Kara, and it was community based, and we had this like awesome infrastructure, except there was no community. Like we couldn't get any people behind us, and so we basically like dissolved it because like community is key. Like you guys keep me going. I'm excited for each new meeting that I have, each new Tech Tuesday that we got going on, all the problems that arise, and the solutions that magically appear. So it's definitely a joint endeavor.
And the meetup you and Joseph started, you guys, is that still going on?
Yeah, we we went last week and nobody showed up. So it's not that bad because we get a chance to have dinner together and catch up. But then we decided to go troll the local Democratic debate at a bar nearby.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, I remember my first impression of Joshua. Nobody knew each other in meet and greet, and then we found out these guys met. They met up in person. They realized they were kind of in the same area, and then they realized they literally lived right next to each other. Small world. Definitely. And the Pacific Northwest has got a growing number of autonomizers, as well as down in Texas. Got quite a few in my area as well. It's not hard for us to have a face-to-face meetup. So yeah. What about you, Tyler? You got anybody near you in autonomy?
Well, I feel like I need to get out and clean the leaves out of my gutter and put the Christmas lights up now. I'm having like anxiety now because Joshua's like doing a podcast and working at the same time, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So I'm almost thinking like we need to do this Monday night, we'll just start multi-streaming to various people's YouTube channels and having roundtable discussions because I don't think there's anything going on Monday night in autonomy. I'll have to double check. I could be totally wrong and like saying that and there's totally something going on, but I forgot.
Sky's the limit. The sky's the limit. That's the brilliance of everything. What if there's an idea, we can go with it. We can develop it. Normally Monday nights. Now it has
language.
A month.
That's right.
Yeah. We've been. I haven't spoken to Federico in a while, but we were doing that. But we were doing that early with Dennis and myself. We've only done that a few times. I was thinking about this week trying to get that momentum going because we can actually hop on and do that anytime if I can catch him once he gets home. Federico I don't know if you know, Michael, Federico's in Mexico City, and he has a brick and mortar business that he does in Mexico City. So, and he's been quite, in season 1, he was quite active, and he was at Red Pill with us. Mexico City's not as far as Amsterdam or Hawaii, but just about pretty far. That people came from the Red Pill Expo to Hartford. So yeah, I need to get on the horn with him and get that going because my Spanish is really just get going downhill, man. You don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah, well, to just kind of chime in with your Invisible Man story, or how you began your story in regard to your experience with Spain. I'm kind of in that mode myself. I'm the Invisible Man in Mexico, and so I try and keep a low profile to some degree. But man, I am in so much in love with this community and everything that you mentioned and everything that everybody is doing. That's another thing that I really, I guess I would comment on is, feeling your own uniqueness. I think is something that I'm really starting to get comfortable with this group as quickly as I've been involved here. I, I I see how much value you guys bring, but it really makes me feel comfortable not knowing all the stuff that you guys know, and just being like, oh, thank God somebody knows it and I don't have to try and figure out how to do that. There's somebody else there that can do that. That's another a real advantage I think that our community is starting to develop is that level of expertise in the particular areas. As I get to know who can do what, it's like, oh, thank God, I'll just send that to them, and I'm not going to have to do it. I would love to do my own show, from here in Acapulco. I do a thing, that's the Anarchapulco 24/7, 365 community, and because there was nobody else doing it, I just figured, well, I got to do it. Somebody's got to do it, and I'm not the guy to be doing it, honestly. But being that somebody's got to do it, I'm doing it, and that's another.
It's
thing
a tough job, man, but somebody's got to do it.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I'm really encouraged by with this group is, and I want to definitely make a distinction when it comes to the culture of excellence. Culture of excellence doesn't mean it's done perfectly. It means it's done and then it's improved upon. And that's something that I see here as well, is that everybody, may not do it perfectly, but they're doing it and they're improving. And that's awesome in my book.
I like that. I'm going to pull that quote out of culture of excellence doesn't mean it's done perfectly. It means it's done and then you improve upon it. That's great.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, not 100% of the time, right? But a lot of the time that's true. And you do need to just begin. That's the next step. It's not all these other things you're focusing on. Sometimes it's like the next step is begin that thing and do it. Do it live, right? I don't think that's true for everything, but for a person like me, that's true. Like that's a lot of the time that's the answer, because for me, I'm not the sapphire-y type, so I'm the more analytical, hesitate. So this is actually very uncomfortable for me, right? That's why I'm doing this to ignite the I'll say ignite the complexity. So no, ignite the complexity. So I just added two Richardoms together to ignite your complexity. Sometimes that's what it takes, really. You just have to jump in, and ignite is a good word. You have to dive in when you don't know how to do something sometimes. And like you're doing, Michael, like you said, well, I'm not the right guy for this job, but since he's not here right now, like I guess I am, And a lot of the time in entrepreneurship, that's every day, right? Like there's nobody there to do that, and so I have to do it. Now, the next level of that should be delegation, automation, systemization, and again, that's some of the tools that Richard talks about in the course. But absolutely, that's one of the things I struggle with, is like I can get the initial ball rolling, but then jumping up to managing the thing or being the business owner and not the technician inside of it doing the daily, operating of the machinery. But that's, I guess, what I'm more comfortable doing. So I have to push myself.
Tyler,
out of
you
those
did a
boundaries,
fantastic job at Red Pill. The videos turned out, as far as I'm concerned, they turned out amazing, much better than I expected. I didn't really have any expectations, but when I first saw the interviews, that we did with Robert Scott Bell and G. Edward Griffin, I was like, whoa, that was pretty good, man. I mean, you had a great setup there. It was perfectly done, professional, and we looked professional. You had the setup out there. I got the guys out and they knew we were serious. Had the clip microphone, the 3 cameras, man.
Yeah. Well, and that was the first time I've used that setup in that way. So none of that was practiced, really. I mean, I had done some basic practicing, and it wasn't perfect. And so maybe from the outside, some people might watch one of those videos and never really think about any of that. And that is kind of the goal sometimes, is with the production. You don't really want them to think about, it's the information that you're trying to get across, right? But if it looks really good and sounds really good, that's a plus. But, I was just talking yesterday on a live stream about my first interview I did in this room, actually right here with somebody, and I didn't do it right. It didn't turn out the way it probably should have, but it's still posted on my YouTube channel. And like Michael said, like we did it. That was like maybe 2016, end of 2016. And I've only just tried to kind of continually get better since then. I've never said this has to be perfect or it's not going to be posted, you know. And maybe that's a mistake in some cases, but I think it's kind of better to. And like you were saying, Chris, like with all that infrastructure that you're laying down with what you're starting on right now, and feeling overwhelmed with like, well, now it's Patreon and BitChute and YouTube, and I got all these platforms and my website and my emails, and I think I'm not perfect at any of that stuff, but I think you'll get more used to that flow of what works for you, and I think you'll find what to focus on and what not to, and over time, like all those spinning plates will start to spin, almost autonomously, and then you'll just be kind of dropping things in where they need to go in with the content. I know it can feel overwhelming. All I could say is, just stick with it. And like Michael was saying, I think that's great advice too, is like sometimes it just needs to get done. Like this stream is done, right? And that's a big part of setting it all up in OBS, so we can just have it done and posted somewhere. It's posted on YouTube. It'll be up there. It'll be on the Facebook. And then when I get time this week, later, after publishing Do It Live and taking care of a bunch of other things that need to be done, then I'll go back and I'll organize it on my website and plug some things in and make it look better.
Tyler, for anyone listening who may not know, what is Do It Live?
Oh, you're asking me?
Yeah.
Do It Live. I talked about it yesterday on my show. I shared a little bit about it. But it's the Do It Live podcast is a recap of autonomy, what's been going on during the week, and trying to highlight some of the more interesting things. But we never can really cover it all. But it gives people a viewpoint I didn't have of autonomy. I had a lot of the interviews you had done that I watched. But this gives people kind of highlights of what's happening weekly. And so for people, I think this is going to help for people on the fence that are like, what is this? Why is it so expensive? Why is that worth it? It doesn't look worth it on this landing page. They can go watch that and learn about the things that aren't advertised. There's a lot of stuff that goes on that's not advertised. And so I'm excited to see how that podcast might help grow autonomy. Yeah.
I mean, help me out here, but look, there are guest speakers. There are sessions on nonviolent communication, NVC. There are life coaches, geopolitics. When we do the History Connected, Richard does his History Connected show. And then what's he doing now? The Smart Reads is a regular thing. There's a regular hangout with Brett Venat in autonomy. Other things that are covered: marketing, copywriting, sales, video editing. What am I leaving out? I mean, you name it. There's something for everybody. And the art of sales. Yeah, time management.
Right.
It just goes on.
Yeah, it does go on. And also, I really appreciate the people that I get to work with. And also, if you do end up working with some of these people, they're some of the best people I think that you'd be able to work with, and including Richard Grove himself, who not only is he going to help, help your learning, help your growth, help you kind of discover maybe an entrepreneurial side of yourself that you haven't really thought about if you've gone through all Richard's other work. It's related, but it's not exactly related, right, to like the Peace Revolution podcast or something. But to be able for me to be familiar with Richard's work for over a decade up to this point, and then be sitting there with the opportunity to work alongside, work with the people that he communicates with, have the students that he's kind of curated in this self-selected group that's come together. It's not just like regular people. And I think people from the outside are like, what is this cult, like what the hell? I just can't imagine what it does sound like from the outside. I'm not big on like even the stuff that's coming out of my mouth right now. This isn't typical Tyler to say and like, oh my God, this thing that I'm doing, everybody needs to check it out. But
well, you could argue that it's unofficially behind the scenes, it does become kind of a think tank, because I mean, look at, for example, the question that Ernie Hancock proposed to autonomy a few weeks ago. I don't know if we've come to a conclusion. I say we. I haven't done anything to look into it myself, but I know there was a lot of interest. Where does the occupancy permit come from? What are its origins? So these are the kind of questions that are constantly being tackled apart from everything else. So, we keep a close eye on the current geopolitical situation of things going on. And at the same time, we keep it real. We like to have a laugh. You know, we like Star Wars. We talk about Star Wars. So, yeah, as we
Where's your
say in
lightsaber?
Spanish, aire todo in autonomy.
You got the lightsaber prop for this moment, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. Now, here we go. Check it out. It's a good time to pull it out. Listen. Yeah, yeah.
Perfect.
This is a Darth Maul lightsaber. I've had it for years, but it's pretty cool. When it's dark, it lights up. It's really, and it responds to the hits. See, listen. Huh? How cool is that? So yeah,
That's
keep
awesome.
it real. That's a lesson that Richard again reiterates all the time in autonomy. Keep it real.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's important to look at the things that we're looking at, like you said, in Smart Reads or History Connected, those series that Richard has relaunched recently. And it's a reminder for me all the time, constantly, that it's like you were saying earlier, Chris, like, yeah, there's these things that I'm building and developing now, and you always have to keep that in perspective with the commitments that you currently have on the table that have to be done, right? But then there's also the research and the things that you need to understand about the world to understand what's going on, and that is a whole lifetime commitment. That's not just something you do willy-nilly, you know, on a Saturday afternoon. Like that in itself, the commitment to discovering truth or being a truth seeker or personal development, constantly improving, these are all commitments that are lifetime. Like, so in addition to all those other things, yeah, we have to, look back, and we have to study the problem, we have to study the enemy, we have to study the economic situations, we have to keep a pulse, we have to keep an eye on these things, right? We don't want to be drowning in the sludge and living in sewage. As Jay Parker says, you don't want to live and you don't want to drink the sewage, basically. Like, you study it, but there also, we need to, have some well-being and health, health awareness of our body
Yeah.
and mental health as well.
Well, a major first step is recognizing the problem with yourself. And that's how it all starts, is recognizing the education system. Most of us went through public schooling, and to recognize the harm that actually did. It created a scarcity mentality. It created learned helplessness, not to mention the literal brainwashing of anyway, Pledge of Allegiance, things like that. Recognizing the
Are
problem.
you telling me that 15,000 hours was used for something more than just learning about history and economics and things, Chris?
Why, yes, Tyler. Allow me to break it to you.
Maybe that's the next episode. So that's the good thing about this is go ahead, Michael.
One of the other things I think is, and I think this might touch on something you said a little bit earlier about, kind of it being a cult or something like that. One of the things that I think is important in this group is, people are open-minded and willing to, examine people's evidence and their beliefs and stuff, and really give you a little bit of time to expound on what your beliefs are and, what is your background and your experience. This is another area that I've witnessed on a couple different occasions, listening to people discuss something that would probably be an emotional driven, trigger fest in most places. And it is something where I was really astounded by the level of self-discipline that both sides demonstrated when they were talking about things that they didn't view in the same way. And so, I don't know how you could call that a cult, but it is it is an experience that I think most people would find, extremely foreign, coming from a regular society and getting into. But it's one in which I think it's almost like an accountability kind of check, in which, like, if I'm going to bring my particular belief, I better have some damn good evidence about what I'm believing. And it really makes it puts the work upon me to really, check my own belief and find out what my evidence is. And to a large degree, that's just another a whole nother level to that culture of excellence that I've been talking about and you've talked about.
It's not
That,
easy. It takes practice. And in fact, we've got a room for just what you're talking about, the real speak room, where, I'm ashamed to admit I haven't used it nearly as much as I would like, but that's where we take hard hitting issues and get in there and just work it out. The Socratic method, just keep asking questions till it boils down to whatever's left, and becoming a listener. The biggest, what you're talking about, I think a lot of autonomizers talking about a lot of controversial issues with their own families has been one of the hardest points. That's the big, from what I've heard, trying to make their families understand what they're going through and trying to in some cases, save their families from imminent harm that the autonomizer can see coming. But, and you can't blame people. It's so hard. It's a hard shell to snap out of.
Well, Chris, you mentioned it. You mentioned it early in the interview. There, you were talking about some of these things are life and death issues. When people are in the system and they're taking pharmaceutical prescriptions and I mean there's all kinds of ways that they can lead people to real disaster in their life. I mean, I recently had a situation. My girlfriend at the time had a breakdown, and essentially we had to go to a psychologist, and they prescribed her a bunch of medication, and we went through this whole circumstance of I don't know anything better than that, so I guess I'm just going to have to do that. But then as I started to gather the information about it, and it actually is kind of led to the diet thing as well. But we ended up getting her off the medication and getting her onto a different diet. And man, I tell you, over a period of just a few, less than a month, really,
Michael,
it was the thing that changed.
If you ever get a chance, you might find my interview with Barbie Rivera very interesting. She started a school in Florida, and even though it was a homeschooling school, it was officially a school. Once she became officially recognized as an education center, Big Pharma started approaching her and literally just offering her a lot of money just to there was tears. You give us a name, bam, she would get a certain amount of money. And then, if you give us an address, and to sit down with the parents and actually get the kid on drugs, the Big Pharma would give her an incentive of $5,000. And she's the only teacher, as far as she knows, and as far as I don't know. I asked her, I said, was there anyone else who hasn't sold out? And she said, as far as she knew, she was the only one. And it cost her, she's in her school is in a shopping center. It doesn't have fancy this, fancy that, but she would not take the money. She refused to take the money. So, yeah.
Well, I mean,
fascinating interview about how Big Pharma approaches the education, the schools, and just because that just touches on that is just a tip of the iceberg of a lot of things that are going on.
Yeah, well, and I mean, like the doctors, when it comes to like the vaccinations and stuff like that, and essentially having the kind of the overall their clientele, so many percentage of their clients using vaccines, and if they don't get their bonuses, and their bonuses could be 6-figure bonuses, and but that could mean somebody's life, and that's something that when it comes to like really thinking about what it is that your occupation is doing, this is something that you got to have critical thinking, and so much of our society has been just take the money and run kind of an attitude. And
don't ask questions
about anybody else.
We're taught in school to obey and not to ask questions.
And they
Right.
legally,
The
they
reason for
can't be
that.
held accountable. You know, that's so disgusting that even if you do pursue some kind of justice for that, there's no accountability. And once you do find the end of that road, it's a federal court set up with taxpayer dollars to pay out the people that can make that long of a journey and basically scientifically prove it to these people that their child was injured. And then, you know, the naysayers just say, well, you know, these parents don't know what they're talking about, even though there's countless mothers and fathers who said, no, day one, fine, after vaccine, totally not fine. What's going on here? And I'm not saying day one of birth. I'm saying, you know, child's 3 years old, they're perfectly fine. Suddenly, one of these vaccinations causes brain inflammation or, you know, whatever else goes on with paralysis. Some of these vaccines cause outright paralysis. So it depends on the vaccine. And I don't mean to make a blanket statement. And I kind of jumped in midstream to what you guys were saying. And we've touched on that a little bit on my show. It's definitely further down the road stuff to go more in depth. I have a whole playlist, and now that I'm mentioning that here, set up with, because I would get into these conversations with people and constantly get the, you know, well, there's no doctors talking about that, or there's no evidence out there, and I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like, there is an overwhelming amount of evidence. Like, you're just not looking. So I compiled like a playlist, and the YouTube playlist is not where you should study and learn about these things. But it's a place to say, well, here's all the doctors and scientists that you're asking me about, because they've made documentaries and they interview. They take their time to sit down and talk about and risk their lives to put this information out there. And then that person won't watch the videos and just tells me that I'm still wrong. You know, it's the most bizarrest thing. I'm pretty used to it at this point.
One of those. It's one of those
I've got it
areas
here.
that is the most frustrating.
This is it. This is the book. Over the course of 1 year, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services engaged in a written debate with the Informed Consent Action Network regarding the safety of vaccines. This book contains all of the unedited correspondence, which represents the most thorough discussion on vaccine safety in history. One thing I took away from Del Bigtree's presentation in Hartford was go to the CDC's own website, and there it is. You go to the right link in the page on their own website. There's never been a double-blind placebo test for there's only a few of the vaccines have actually done it. Mm-hmm. So anyone who claims, the science says so, well, actually, I think the scientific method is very important, and they don't follow it. They do not follow the scientific method. And I thought, when I learned that, actually, I thought that's the end of the argument right there. So if someone's pressuring me, I say, well, I would be interested. I would love to, but, make sure it's just been tested through the proper scientific method procedures. They have not. They haven't done it.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that's a lot of professions these days are kind of in that same boat where they've been led astray, and it's the fact that the people involved are allowed to blind themselves with their pride and behind their degrees and certifications and stuff, but it doesn't mean anything. It just means that they that schooling is just, they learned how to take orders, and that's not enough. We need critical thinkers, and that means we need critical thinkers in every area of everything that's going on in the world these days, because there's not a whole lot of them. And man, we need some more.
Yeah, it's a bizarre thing to watch, kind of the denial of things that are right in your face. It's not like like at this point we're not even asking that people dig that far. So I've not given up. I just don't really talk about that with people, because at this point and moving forward, I feel like the information on that particular topic, not with all topics that maybe people should be aware of, but with vaccines in particular, I feel like the floodgates are starting to kind of open. I feel like even though people are hardening and digging in their heels, that it will become at one point undeniable, I hope. And not that I wish the amount of pain and suffering that's going to have to go on for that message to really finally come through. But it's like people, it's, when you start asking questions like this, guys, it's pretty dangerous, because when you start really uncovering the why of why this is, it's not about information, was what I found out. It's not about delivering the information in a particular way, or maybe they just need to hear it from this teacher. Maybe if they find it from this person. Once someone's sort of fully committed to the authoritarian top-down model of even information and how things are presented in their mind as reality, or how they trick themselves into thinking that things that are clearly contradictory can just be okay in like a pragmatic form of worldview. So it's like from the ground up in their being, they've decided to go in that direction. And, I'm not saying like screw them or, so to hell with those people. I just feel like you can find more peace knowing that this information isn't for the masses, and they're not going to wake up. But, there could be a massive consciousness shift and awakening in pockets is the way I more or less see it. But
Will said, Tyler. Yeah, I learned a long
that.
time ago. It does you no good getting on social media websites trying to scream these things to people. It does no good. If there's any hint of curiosity on other people's parts, then maybe there's a thread you could elaborate on to, present people with information. But yeah, there's no point. I agree. Good.
Well, I think I'm kind of the guy that comes from the street smarts kind of avenue. I kind of made my way up my own. I went into the military when I was 17 years old. I kind of lived, was born in Gary, Indiana, when it was going through its hard times and so forth. So,
did you know the Jacksons?
I did actually get to meet Michael Jackson one time in front of the mayor's office in Gary, or the city hall in Gary. I was on a kind of a errand for a construction project.
Who's that?
Just happened to pull up at the same time.
I'm just kidding.
What did you say, Tyler? Did you just say who's that?
Michael Jackson is hometown, Gary.
I'm just kidding. Sorry.
I know Tyler's young, but come on, man.
Oh man, that didn't even cross my mind. But one of the things is, if in a system that's run by the mafia, the effective thing is, as long as they're getting their take, and essentially you're not creating any kind of problem for them, they really don't have a problem with you. And in fact, if you're doing something that kind of benefits them in a way, and for a large part, a lot of the things that we do, if we're keeping the system running to some degree, we're beneficial to the system. And so in that regard, I don't really think that we really have to worry about a lot of the stuff that I think a lot of people end up worrying about. Is that, when we're in a marketplace, and I think even the mafia people really kind of understand this, is that if you've got value, then you're worth something, And so to a large degree, what we do is kind of the same thing as the mafia does. They kind of look at that as like a family. And when we have something for our family that's valuable, we deliver it to our family, and we just keep, taking care of the things that are risk, So if there's something out there that's a risk, whether it be the big bad guy that calls themselves government or something like that, you understand that there's a way to solve that problem. There is a way to get rid of that risk, and it probably isn't the official channels, but more than likely it can be taken care of. And that's, we just got to always know that in the marketplace where there's harm and there's value, knowing those things and being able to see those things clearly is how we solve all of our problems. And there's just no
it
way
comes
to
down
get
to the
around
same thing, questioning everything and applying critical thinking without, you've got to separate the emotion and figure out,
I don't know.
Am I being lied to?
That wasn't dogmatic enough for an anarchist living in Mexico. I want to hear more dogma. I need to hear more you shoulds.
Well, my
you
big thing is kind of creating the marketplace that real value can be determined. And when you do that, I think you can also find real harm can be determined as well. And both those things are valuable things to know. And once you know those things, I kind of feel like you can be invisible. You can be invisible to the system because you can create the circumstance where you become beneficial to everybody, but you kind of create the rules that say this is the way I'm going to do everything.
Right.
I'm going to
I observed that to be true, like in my own life, that it's not that I think that the language surrounding the non-aggression principle needs to be updated, kind of like I was saying with Larkin Rose's work and rhetoric, that I feel like it needs all an upgrade and a reboost and reinvigoration, and a lot of it, some of that philosophical worldview, even kind of what you were saying about markets, I tend to agree, and I think I picked up what you were laying down. But at the same time, if we had more time, I would want to get into that further with you, because I think the way you phrased it, I was just totally joking about the being ideological or something, or dogmatic, because I thought it was very well, it sounded like rehearsed, like something you'd talked about before, and then also it made sense to me why I didn't have a rejection, icky feeling about someone yelling at me about free markets and the non-aggression principle. So yeah, I think that's what needs to happen, is the language needs an upgrade. And but going back to recognizing in my own life that if I attempt to help people and attempt to do unto others as I would like done unto me, and I'm not a narcissist, or I'm not someone who wants to hurt myself. I'm dropping the word, blanked out of my mind. A person who likes to hurt themselves. So for me, I don't want other people to harm me either, and I recognize that the more that we live in harmony in that way, that people tend to be more free in communities, societies, civilizations, with at least some basics like that. And then I think it needs to be a lot further into the responsibility side of things. I think there's a responsibility aspect to freedom that's almost more important than a lot of the things that people focus on. But Michael, I do want to thank you for bringing to the discussion today what you did and chiming in. It was a little, I was a little nervous how this would all go, just dropping an open link to a live stream into a group of like 200 plus people and just saying, come on in. But you were a very good guest to add to the conversation. And I think that in different ways, we'll try to do this again and repeat this process eventually on the Autonomy Students and Grads YouTube channel. So this wasn't me trying to hijack traffic into my YouTube or something like that. My YouTube is a project that we're growing, and it'll be done over time, but more of a tech check. After my last interview, there were issues with the video being very choppy. This interview looks great. It looks like I'm going to be able to leave this up without having to do any post-production, and that's kind of the idea with this. So the other thing is, like with all these tools, with OBS and Zoom and Voicemeeter Banana, and then bringing this together into what everyone saw today here in this interview, that those skills can be delivered to the community. In fact, they already have been. There's already many tutorials in the Autonomy production room and other places where we've described how to get this done on your side, but there are also projects being spun up where I may host a Zoom meeting like this for other people and just mute my video, and I'll just be producing the show while other autonomizers start out on their journey with new podcasts. And so one of my goals with Autonomy, and not just Autonomy, but the truth, freedom movement / whatever you want to call it, is to help people overcome technical hurdles if they have them. And I know nobody likes to like have somebody overly help them and be like, oh, well, let me show you how to do that, and like too much. But I like to present in a show like this that if somebody has questions about how this all runs, they're free to reach out to me. And there's nothing hidden here. All the stuff I do is free pretty much. I did pay for Restream today to be able to restream to like a page on Facebook rather than my profile, but it was a Cyber Monday deal, so it was like 50% off on the Restream package. So I wait for times like that to do it, because I didn't need to do it, but it was such a good deal that I'm gonna now be able to stream to so Facebook says there's 9,000 people that like my page. Yeah, I'll get like one like per share unless I pay them. That's how Facebook works, right? Like unless you pay them nobody sees your stuff. Even and
like
it's
mafia.
been like I'll share stuff and my like percentage will go down, and it's been at the same level for like a year now, even though it was like going skyrocketing and then just straight, yeah, like you said, like a mafia. Well, no, that's a business model. It's their business model, and I'm not gonna hate on their
Yep.
business model while I'm on there and sit and say, well, Facebook this, Facebook that. Yeah, we could go into the origins of Facebook and InQtel and the seed money, and probably Zuckerberg's whole story is probably all bullshit, is what I come to understand at this point. Just like everything else that we get
The
told
data
about how
collection
stuff works.
that they're doing.
Yeah, it's all probably way pre-planned before Zuckerberg was even a person.
I
in the
agree,
story,
Tyler. I
you know?
agree.
DARPA. It's all DARPA.
Yeah, I mean it is. It's not like
DARPA and ARPA
it's not
before
a
that.
conspiracy. And this book right here is a mainstream book, The Pentagon's Brain by Annie Jacobson. I don't bring it up to say here's all the esoteric knowledge you need to know about. I'm bringing it up as a mainstream example of that. What you just said is not some like far out thing. Like it's all military invented all these things. And Michael, I know you were in the military, but and I'm not saying any kind of negative or moral judgment at this point. I'm just saying our society and its tools are based on, you know, death, destruction, and porno and gaming, you know. Well, that's where all this stuff's coming from. But we're using it for good, right? And like I've been saying recently, hopefully that's just not totally naive of us to think like we're going to step out here and do this. We're going to use it for good. But I think that the floodgate, I think that there's people that try to run this shit that are psychopaths that overestimate themselves. And I do feel like cats have been left out of bags, you know. And
I
at
hope
least
you're
I
right.
like to think that, right?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things in regard to that we aren't really aware of, but I would tend to believe, you know, having the experience that I've had in the military as well as in the corporate world, that there's a lot of things that people aren't keeping their eyes on, that for enlightened individuals that are critical thinkers, we can run circles around them. And that was the reason that I left the corporate world, was because it was so, you know, stupid and archaic, because they never really they didn't have a good feedback channel to solve the easy problems, you know. And then we can solve, I mean, we're just demonstrating how we can solve so many problems and just create all kinds of new things. This little thing that we're doing right now is just the pinnacle of the beginning of that, and it's going to be amazing, man. We're going to do so many fun and exciting things, and man, I'm just so thrilled that you guys are doing it, Tyler, that you're putting this out here. I can certainly understand doing the little bitty show that I've done, how difficult this all is, and you're doing it like 10 times better than I am. So I mean, more power to you. And I would invite all the people that are in autonomy to, like what you just said in regard to, you know, just kind of giving people that avenue to kind of launch their uniqueness and what they can do. And you're providing that opportunity for them as well. And I'd invite all of them to take advantage of that. And
Right on. Yeah, at the moment we're here doing it together, so it's cool. And Chris, what do you got to say to wrap up today? How can we close this out? I have things that I've got to go attend to tonight. I would like to continue the discussion on. Again, Michael, I really appreciate everything you had to say and what you've been saying throughout the last couple weeks. Is like when you said I was doing something 10 times. No. You've got something that's 10 times, you know, what I've got. So there's nothing about it's balancing out with everybody that's contributing, and that's what we should do. We come in and we somehow it all equals out once we're all coming with authenticity. So it doesn't matter,
Absolutely.
you know, about a skill that somebody has versus a skill that somebody else has, and that's what I was talking about. It's just like laying out the playing field or leveling it for certain things, like Chris has done here for people, to show them that, like, hey, you can do this too. And here, I bought this mic, I got it hooked up, I got my spit guard on. He has props surrounding his desk that he can pull out at any moment to bring on the show. I've seen him wear devil horns on the show.
Check it out. Got the Rancor monster here. How cool is that, eh? Arrgh, for any Return of the Jedi fans. He's always on hand. And Yeah, I've got my horns here as well. Yeah, see.
That's a good way to wrap up
Yeah,
the
yeah,
show.
yeah. So I don't really have anything else to add other than we'll just plug in our websites. I mean, for autonomy, anyone who's curious, who's listening, it's is it what's the website? I have it
Getautonomy.info/ignite
get
or just getautonomy.info.
yeah, and and I'm at truthconduit.com, and yeah, sign up, check it out, and Tyler, you're at tylerbloyer.com.
That's not too hard to remember.
It
Michael,
sounds
any
French.
websites you want to
Tyler
drop?
Bloyer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. I don't know. It sounds more like a different European to me, but Michael, do you have anything you
Good
wanted to
fun.
share, to drop out there for people to check out? Anything you got going on? Sorry to put you on the spot.
I'm a big advocate for Anarchapulco. Come on down for that. I do Anarchapulco 24/7, 365, which is essentially the community of people that stay down here and sometimes are down here, and maybe they're just visiting sometimes. But anybody that kind of has that spirit, that is the autonomy spirit as well, that loves freedom and wants to make the world a better place, I'm for all those kind of people, and that's my community of people. And I try and keep it together and keep people, positive about the future, because man, freedom is really the fuel that we need to make the world a better place. And it does require a lot of things. It is a responsibility to be vigilant and to keep your eyes open and to understand that there's a lot of value out there that people are missing, that that could make the difference. And it is a matter of getting people's eyes open and encouraging them to do what they love, and you know and stop fearing the system and fearing that they're going to take over the world, because fear is really the tool that they use. That's what shuts us down in our mind and imprisons our mind, and get beyond that. And that's why Do It Live is so important. That I'll leave it there.
Not just the show, but do it live in life. Do it live, folks. It's the message. And I want to really thank Chris McMillon for providing us more insight with his work and his life and his family, and coming on and doing this test run / doing it live interview here on tylerbloyer.com. Thank you, Michael, for chiming in, Joshua Hill for chiming in, Pam for coming on and doing it live with us here. If I missed anybody, I'm sorry. And we'll plan one of these again in the near future and highlight another autonomy student or graduate. And like I said, eventually this will probably be live streaming on autonomy, and I'll continue to do interviews myself, bringing on interesting people. A lot of the people that we talked about today I want to plan to bring on in the future. So thanks again for everyone sticking around up to this point and watching this interview. Feel free to give us feedback. You can email me at tyler@tylerbloyer.com. And with any questions or concerns, this will be posted on my website in a few days, and there'll be some resources and links with the guest links in there as well. So again, thanks everyone for watching, and have a great evening.
All right. Thanks a lot, Tyler.